to come to the table.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Brannon?
Again, there are two sides to every story, and then somewhere in the middle is some truth, we hope. When I heard about the lawsuit, I heard that it was devastating the South End, and this suit against the oil companies, and no one's going to want to do business with us. So then I'd hear the other side of the story. So then I went and talked to the attorneys that are handling the lawsuit. And tell me what this is. What it is not against oil and gas in general. It's against the specific entities that laid pipelines through our marshlands that was the beginning of the end of our coastline. They were supposed to lay those pipelines and then cover them up. They didn't. We're only going after the people that didn't do what they agreed to do when we allowed them to go through our marshlands. I don't think it's unreasonable. That's absolutely my platform. The same rules apply for everyone. We're going to do the right thing, period.
Thank you, Ms. Brannon. Mr. Cormier?
Would you please repeat the question?
Here's a question. Do you support the lawsuit against oil companies for the damages they have caused in the whole parish, East and West Bank?
It's my appreciation that at this current time, the State Attorney General and the Governor have both stepped into that lawsuit. I think we need to use every available means to represent our parish's interest. And that's why I keep bringing back, though, going to the issue of the mineral royalties to clarify. By getting these mineral royalties, we're not hurting the oil and gas companies. Currently, the mineral royalties are being paid by the oil and gas companies to the federal government. And we can use that as a negotiating tool. Hey, pay us the money, let us redo our coastline with those monies. And that can be used in the midst of the litigation as a tool, as a negotiating chip.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Roussel?
Yes, let's know where we are today. First, you heard a story about we filed the lawsuit, then we backed off from the lawsuit, but there's a third phase. We're back in the lawsuit. And where we are today is because of the meeting that we had with the Attorney General and the Governor in their office in Baton Rouge, and we were instructed that, look, we are moving forward with this lawsuit at the state level. You can be at the table, and we recommend that you have representation. And if you follow the politics in Baton Rouge between the State Attorney General and the Governor, they've been feuding over money from the Coastal Fund since they got there. Now, we were instructed to have counsel, and we have counsel. That's the third part of the story, that we are back at the table, representing Plaquemines Parish's interests to make sure that if there are settlements, that we are able to be a part of that settlement. Other parishes that have not joined in, if they do not join in, the state will file the suits on their behalf, and they will make the decision where the funds go.
All right, thank you very much. We'll start this question with Mr. Turner. Mr. Turner, if elected, what would you do to lower flood insurance rates in the parish?
What I'll do is we're going to start with coastal restoration, create a mitigation bank, things that would knock down the storm surge. You know, we'll do some modeling to support it, and I think as we look at our levee protection, that's coming in. We have to do new models, but we also have to continue to work. We also have to continue to build our coastline. And in doing so, the difference is as we do it, we're going to capitalize on those revenues because we're going to do some of the work. We're going to make it a win-win. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Brannon?
From my research so far, the only thing that's going to affect our flood insurance rates is what FEMA says. In July, I believe it was, there was a town hall meeting for the folks in Jesuit Bend, those of, the beginning of the outside of the wall, and our engineering company spoke to us and told us that they're under a $3 million contract with the parish, which made my head just go to do a study, and that their recommendation was going to be to raise the river levee about 6 inches to a foot. That again made my head want to explode, because I didn't understand at that point that what they were doing was getting us to the 100-year protection according to FEMA. And we know with FEMA, it doesn't matter what's real. What matters is, can you check the right boxes in the right places? So that's what we're trying to do. We're looking at doing it in sections. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brannon. Mr. Cormier.
Next year, FEMA will come down to this parish, and they'll be looking at base flood elevation rates. I'm going to follow the course of a former parish president who was also an attorney. And when FEMA came down, I think it was in the 80s, and began to wanted to drive up our flood insurance rates, he pretty much told them, well, first he asked them to negotiate, and they weren't interested. They're government bureaucrats. Next, he threw down a lawsuit on the table. He said, see you guys in court, and here's some of our studies contesting what your findings are. And all of a sudden, it was amazing how much more reasonable the people from FEMA became. And that's going to be the tactic I will take. If we're from this parish, this is our home. If we don't fight for it, the government bureaucrats in D.C. certainly won't. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cormier. Mr. Roussel?
Yes, we are working with FEMA and a consultant. We met today on this very issue. The maps that are being proposed have different effects on different parts of the parish. What we have to do now is evaluate what FEMA has said to our consultant and come to the middle of the road to be able to do this. However, the most important thing about your flood insurance rates is that when the Bigot Waters Act is renewed in 2017, we have to have representation in that bill to grandfather you in so your rates don't go through the roof. Now, we can sit and work on FEMA maps and FEMA rates and ask for forgiveness for all of these things and litigate. But the most important thing in my mind right now is that that language needs to be there, because all of you who built to a flood elevation under your current permit needs to be honored. The federal government should not come in and take your rights as a property owner and raise your rates where you cannot afford your mortgage.
Thank you. Mr. Lapine?
Thank you, Jeff. First thing we need to do is work with state and federal officials, make sure we finish the levee projects. Every levee project, from Bell Chase all the way down to Boothville. The 100-year protection, the 50-year protection, whatever we must do, we must provide that resident with every protection that we can do. We must work with the LAMP program. That's the levee analysis mapping program. And what that considers, that helps us, as Mr. Roussel has touched on, the mapping that we will come to so we can adopt. The problem with that is not fair across the board, in my eyes. I think we need to offer a fair insurance rate for everyone in the whole parish, and that's part of the problem. Right now, it helps one part of the parish, and the other part of the parish it hurts. So we need to get on the same keel and get that fixed. So, thank you, Jeff.
All right, thank you. All right, this next question, we'll start with you, Ms. Brannon. A lot of the questions submitted involved items related to a former parish president, Billy Nungesser. This question is, what do you plan to do to help with the budget deficit of over $200 million that was left by now Lieutenant Governor Billy Nungesser's administration?
I'm going to start with a reorg of our operations in the parish. We've got to go lean. We've got to go first make sure that we're spending every dollar wisely. What do we do at home when someone loses a job or when we have a reduction in pay? We don't go to the money tree in the backyard and get more money. What we do is we decide what can we live without. And right now, we're living without the basics. We're living without levee protection. We're living without drainage, mosquito control, etc. So it goes back to making sure that before we lay people off and bring any more money in, if we're not spending what we have wisely, we'll just get more in and we'll just keep blowing that the same way we've been blowing it. It's going in every different direction. I can't imagine how much we've spent on legal fees. It's mind-boggling.
Thank you, Ms. Brannon. Mr. Cormier?
Yes, in 2014, Jeff, the general fund operating expenditures of President Nungesser were $47.8 million. My father cut that general fund operating expenditure in 2015 of $43.3. That was a $4.5 million cut. Now, when you're dealing with a budget, There's only two ways to do it. You increase revenues or you cut expenditures. And hopefully, that's why I beg all of you, go to my website, amoscormier.com, and look at the paper I wrote. We have an opportunity to increase the revenues. And naturally, I'd prefer increasing the revenues as opposed to making more cuts. But we'll do what we have to do, just like my father did.
Thank you, Mr. Cormier. Mr. Roussel, let me ask you to start, of course, as a former parish president. Are these numbers that several of the folks who posted these questions referred to, are they correct about this large of a deficit? And whatever the amount is, what is your plan to deal with it?
Yes, when I left office, we were operating on $48 and $50 a barrel and balancing a budget and paying our bills. However, when this past government went and got into $200 million worth of debt, they increased the annual note from $2 million a year to $8.5 million a year, actually $8.7 million. And so what happens is, if we go back to that same baseline, that's $6.5 million that we do not have to pay payroll and balance the budget. So what we have done is we have taken and stripped as much funds out of the budget to keep it floating. But just think about this for a minute. This parish went through almost $400 million of FEMA money. It went through good times of oil and gas at over $100 a barrel, which gave them $15 to $20 million a year more in cash. They put none of it aside. And today, because they didn't prioritize correctly, we are buying water from Jefferson Parish because we don't have the money to expand our water plant.
Thank you. Mr. Cormier?
Yeah. Just a quick clarification. In January 2014, prior to my father taking office, the total debt was $211 million. That was all incurred prior to my father taking office.
Okay. So these numbers are accurate.
I don't want to disparage the previous administration. I meant the previous administration.
Okay. Gotcha. All right, Mr. Lapine. Mr. Lapine?
Correction, Mr. Correa. On the previous administration that I can remember, the only debt that we incurred was the courthouse bond of $25 million and the coastal restoration of $65 million. So in my time, that was $90 million. So any other bond money that was still calculated, it was before that time.
Would you like to see?
I got it too.
Well,
Okay.
let me say this.
Can I finish the question?
Okay,
Go ahead.
he's got, let him answer, it's his time. Go ahead, Mr.
Okay,
Lapine.
thank you. As I alluded before, when barrel of oil was $104 a barrel, oil grew, government grew, absolutely. Now we must conform. Oil's down to $45 a barrel. We must be able to live within our means. We grew so big of government, now we must conform. Lesson learned. We must move back and live within our means. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Turner?
Well, I was a part of that abusive administration that spent money like water. And I remember my last year in office, the council was spending money like water, and I was warning them we didn't have it. When it came to my district, they threw up the budget saying we don't have the money, but they were still spending money like water in other areas. You know, and so there's a lot of blame to go around, but this administration failed. The parish president failed grossly, but the council failed also. What we need to do to get out of this mess, as others have said, is we definitely have to raise revenues. One, we have to treat our people right so that our employees would become more efficient. We have to look for opportunities to diversify, as one of the previous questions. We have to generate more revenues. As we outsource, we need to take advantage of the coastal restoration. There are millions of dollars that we can get in, but it's just that when the millions of dollars come in, only the private industry take advantage of it. We need to absorb some of that funding, and I believe we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Mr. Cormier, we'll start with you on this question. This is, again, a theme that was part of many of the questions that were submitted by the residents. Would you say that Plaquemines Parish is a corrupted parish? And if so, what would you do to clean it up? Mr. Cormier, we'll start with you. Did you hear the question?
I'm sorry, I thought you said Mr. Lapine.
Okay. No, we're going to start with you.
Okay, I'm sorry. Please repeat.
Okay, here's the question. Would you say that Plaquemines Parish is a corrupted parish? And if so, what would you do to clean it up?
I'd say that when my father took office, he made changes. Arguably, more changes need to be made. It takes time to change. It's one thing, like I said, and I'll have this, we have a printouts of this, just to clarify what Mr. Lapine said. We have a debt crisis. We were left $211 million in debt. And that was from the prior council as well, as Mr. Turner pointed out. And these facts, these are numbers, there's public record. I think my brother will be handing out copies of this, because I foresaw people like to get fuzzy and hazy on the numbers. $211 million in debt. It's the largest debt in the history of the parish, folks. And it also, we were left with the worst bond rating, or I should say credit rating, in the history of the parish. Now, is that illegal? Is that corrupting? You can argue, but I'll tell you this, it was poor management.
All right, Mr. Cormier. Mr. Roussel.
Yes, I just want to make sure that people know when you borrow money, you got to pay interest and you got to pay it back. And that $100 million includes an extra $70 million worth of interest. So you're looking at $170 million without adding a few extras to get to that 211 that Mr. Cormier is talking about. And as far as being corrupt, think about this. We designed a project called the Reach B2 project. Fort Jackson to Venice, a levee project behind the levee. They spent so much money on consultants and engineers, by the time they opened the bids, they were $7 million short and couldn't build the project. So today, we don't have the project built. But what we did do, under the Cormier administration, we reprogrammed the money, moved $20 million to the East Bank levee, put the rest of the money with the state to be able to do Jesuit Bend study, Oakville levy, and reprioritize that money by matching it with state money. So are we corrupt? Think about that.
Thank you, Mr. Roussel. Mr. Lapine?
Mr. Correa, I wouldn't say corrupt. I say mismanaged. We've been mismanaged for a couple years. Maybe I was to blame. I've been on the council for 6 years, okay? So now it's time to straighten up, okay? We will move it, straighten it up. We will move forward. We will put a good 3 directors in place, and we will make this work. Now, I don't consider corrupt, but mismanaged. So thank you.
Thank you.
I like that.
And the saying
Mr.
goes,
Turner.
And the saying goes, if the shoe fits, wear it. All right? I can tell you, I wasn't a part of it. I was not a part of it. And the question is, are we corrupt as a parish? The answer is no. If the question is, have we been corrupted? The answer is yes. Billy Nungesser, with his entourage and his backdoor deals, has corrupted this parish. That's why we're in the debt that we're in. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I don't have any problem saying it. You know, if Trump can call Hillary Clinton crooked, I can call Billy Nungesser corrupt. He's corrupt. And so the question is, how do we fix it? How do we fix it? You need honest government. You need fair businesses. If you want businesses to come here, then treat them fairly. Don't exclude them. We pick and choose who gets the contracts. We have to be fair. We need a level playing field, treat people with respect, and that's how the bottom line is, the leaders create the culture. If we're not corrupt, and if corruption raises its head, we can squelch it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Ms. Brannon.
Is Plaquemines Parish corrupt? Is the Pope Catholic? This isn't anything new. We have been the flagship for corruption since the Perez days, and we know that. The difference is, thank you, the difference is that during the Perez days, we knew who the sleeping giant was. And we knew if we just didn't bother him too much, we could get rocks on our driveway, we wouldn't be bothered, and we could have our life. When I went to UNO in 1975, tuition was $160 per semester for a full-time student. And because I was a resident of Plaquemines Parish, I could show up at the bursar's office and get $100 just for being a full-time student. That's the kind of thing that corruption did. The corruption that we have now is rampant. I've had people tell me that over the years, tune in later.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Brandon. All right, Mr. Roussel, we'll start with you. In the past 30 years, there have been 3 parish employee layoffs. So do you support another parish-wide layoff? And if so, who will you start the layoffs with? Mr. Roussel, we're starting with you.
Yes, well, let me tell you what's going on. Actually, we are down 175 employees. 150 of those employees were by attrition. People that left, went for better jobs, moved on, got scared that they may get laid off. The actual layoff numbers are 22. Now, to be able to balance the budget, the current administration is reorganizing the government, and they are going to give us a budget by November the 1st. Now, where do we start from there? We will start at that point when they give us that budget. We will go through it and we will make decisions. We haven't seen it yet, but we are hoping that they don't start with the bottom worker. We don't want to lay off the worker bees. What we want to do is consolidate departments and be able to streamline government to be more efficient. That means stop.
All right. All right. Thank you, Mr. Roussel. Mr. Lapine.
Jeff, Monday I had a 3-hour meeting with our finance director and our assistant finance director, and yes, it is pretty bleak. And based on the price of oil, we're going to have to do some consolidation. So our plan is to maximize our potential with what we have. Our motto is we're going to be asked to do more with less, and we will. We will find a way. Layoffs are probably on the horizon, but we don't cut all the worker bees, we don't cut all the public service, we don't cut all the public utilities, all the stuff that you need to operate day to day. So we will have to get in there and figure out what we have to do and make an effort to keep everyone. It's going to be a tough fight, but again, we will do more with less. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lapine. Mr. Turner.
No layoffs. We're going to make the adjustments. We're going to make the adjustments. Whatever we have to do as far as generating revenues, that's what we're going to do. One thing we're going to do is, and when you talk about we have to do with less, what we're doing is we're asking some people to do without, right? And the people that we're asking to do without are those on the bottom. We're going to change that. We were given a 3% pay increase to the unclassified employees every year, whether it was due or not, needed or not, every year. That's going to change. And yet the guys on the bottom, we nickel and dime them. We're not going to do that, right? You've got position head of economic development, $95,000 a year? Crazy. We're not getting our return, he's gone, right? And we're going to lower the rate. There's going to be an adjustment. All of your directors, they came in, instead of coming in at a base, they came in at a much higher rate. We're going to readjust the rate of the non-classified. We're going to make it reasonable so that they can grow through attrition annually with pay increases and not automatically start them out at the top. Now that we've given all of these increases, we've widened the gap because it's not based on what you make, but a percentage. We've widened the gap. We're going to close the gap.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Ms. Brandon?
Unfortunately, I think layoffs are going to happen. Layoffs are going to happen as we modernize our technology. I've tried for 2 weeks to call someone that's in the Popich building, but because the voicemail isn't working and somebody down the road answers the phone and doesn't know how to get in touch with them, it's 2016 and we don't have voicemail that works. So we've got to modernize. When you modernize, some jobs fall away. They just become obsolete or outdated. Help me understand why every council member needs a full-time secretary. I love these women. But at $46,000 a year per secretary, and Mr. Roussel does not have one, but
Thank you.
welcome. I try to be fair. But what I want to do is take those people that are going to be displaced and help them find jobs in the parish. There are
Thank you, Ms. Brandon. Mr. Cormier.
Thank you, Jeff. Naturally, the goal is to align recurring revenues with recurring expenditures, and we have a revenue shortfall problem because of the decline in oil prices. Naturally, I like to take a macroeconomic approach to this because when you have local employees, you have services, and that money tends to circulate in the parish, and that should also be a goal. Naturally, though, we have to see how it goes, and hopefully, with, I said, the move with OPEC, that our revenues will increase to where we can minimize the losses if expenditures need be made. But naturally, that's not the first goal. We'll look at every other option prior to that.
Thank you, Mr. Cormier. All right, Mr. Levine, we'll start with you, and this is follow-up to what Ms. Brannon said, and a lot of the questions asked about this. Do you support the reduction in the number of parish council members and/or reduction in their salaries and/or reduction in their staff members and their staff salaries?
Well, Jeff, working on the council for 6 years, it's been a tough battle with non-council members. Sometimes we use the analogy of a non-headed snake. So it's very tough sometimes to work with non-people. A reduction of the council members, I think, is a good fit for the size of our parish. We need to maybe evaluate that in the upcoming year or so. I haven't made up my idea if I consider 5 and 2, 5, but we need to move to a smaller form of government. Yes, maybe reduce the salary of the council members. But
What about secretarial staff? What about secretarial staff of the council? Secretarial staff.
The parish staff?
Of the council. Do they need a secretary?
Oh, okay, the secretaries, I'm sorry, I apologize. Assistants, as we like to say. Okay.
I'm sorry, assistant. Yes.
Yes, Jeff, again, I would look into that. I don't have a problem with reducing the size of the assistants, but I want to do it fairly. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Turner.
We need to keep the 9 council members because it gives you better representation. If you reduce the number of council members, somebody could very well get left out. The more people you have looking at it, the more coverage you have. Yes, it's tougher, but it needs to be tough. It needs to be tough. If you can't sell it, then shame on you, but it needs to be tough because too many, we just talked about the parish being corrupt or have been corrupted in many ways, but we also know that areas have been neglected. So we want to make sure that everybody's represented. When it comes to salaries, just as I've stated with the unclassified people coming in, a lot of times they pick up on the progression of their predecessor, the person before them, instead of having an established base pay and knowing that over a 4-year period, they will gradually increase throughout that period. So we need to know what we want it to look like at day 1 and what we want it to look like in year 4. And so I could see adjusting the pay, but make sure that it's a living wage.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Ms. Brannon?
I was on the school board for 16 years, and we're a 9-member school board. Time and time again, when those issues that would come up that would split the vote, someone would strut in and say, I got my 5 votes. It's all about the 5 votes, right? With 9 people, you need 5 votes to make something happen. My concern, if we go down to a 5-member council, you're only going to need 3 votes. Until we clean this up,
Bingo.
and until everything is transparent, and one of my new favorite people always tells me, sunlight is the greatest disinfectant. We adhere to the sunshine laws, we put everything out in the open, everything that happens in our parish government needs to be accessible. If I know what my friend is having for dessert tonight because of Facebook, why does it take me so long to figure out what's going on in my own government? Until we clean that up, 9.
All right, thank you. Mr. Cormier.
The reason why, the history is interesting, I actually litigated on this issue. The reason why we have 9 members is because 2 courageous men, Mr. Merlis Broussard, who is no longer with us, and Mr. Ernest Johnson, had the courage to stand up and address some civil rights issues that had plagued the parish. Because of that, a federal judge, Judge Hebe, mandated that we have 9 members, both for school board and for the council. Now, what's interesting is this. We're also under Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Now, there's a lot of Supreme Court litigation occurring on that. Anything we do to change would have to be cleared by the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, whether it's 9, 7, or 5. They'd have to pre-clear it. Now, what I will say is this, and this is how I'm always thinking about increasing the revenues. This is an unfunded mandate. We're under a federal court order. So if the DOJ tells us you need 9, hey, fine. But you guys pay us some revenue to pay for the other members. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Cormier. Mr. Roussel.
Yes, when I came into office a year and a half ago, I had been studying the budget before I ever got elected and knew that we didn't have any money and knew we would hit this day today. So I didn't hire a secretary. I made an agreement with my fellow councilmen and share duties, which is the most logical way to do it, because if you want to have a bloated payroll, you just add people to it. Now, the 9 members, I believe that 9 members are a good number as far as representation. However, the reapportionment plan that we are under, and if you look at the boundaries of the districts, that is what caused the problem that I see, where you have people in Empire and Jesuit Bend representing the same district. So I think there could be a better plan as far as reapportionment goes. And as far as reducing the council members, you know, you elect part-time council members. That's what we are. They should work. They should put in part-time. They shouldn't just show up once every 2 weeks and not know what's going on and vote blindly and put us in the situation we're in today.
All right, thank you, Mr. Roussel. All right, we're going to start with Mr. Turner for this question. A lot of the questions submitted were about this topic. At one time, our parish medians and sidewalks and roadways used to be well manicured and well maintained. Not so today. Would you support contracting out or actually working with the private sector in actually the cutting of these medians in Upper Bell Chase and other main thoroughfares to make this parish look more like Jefferson Parish medians? Mr. Turner?
No, I would not. I would not look to privatize it. I would look to make sure that our parish workers are taking care of the neutral grounds. Any beautification projects, we should be able to do it. We should be able to work with the communities. You know, when you go through the parish, some areas, you're even having some residents cutting the levee because they want it to look nice. You know, when you take away the ditches, right, then everybody cuts to the road. As long as you have ditches, it's that broken window syndrome. If you allow an area to become dilapidated or it starts with a broken window, then everything else gets neglected. And we just have to make sure that our parish workers and the parish president is focusing on making this place beautiful. There's no reason for us to look the way we do. Certain areas were neglected just to be punished. I lived through it, right? And so all we have to do is charge our parish workers with the upkeep. Engage the community, ask for their input. A lot of them take care of their homes and yards very well. They can help us, but we can partner with the community. But why, if we strap for money, then why pay someone else? We can do it.
All right, Mr. Turner, thank you. Ms. Brennan?
Can you repeat the question, please?
It involved beautification in the parish. So the gentleman who submitted this said this: at one time, our medians and sidewalks and roadways used to be well maintained. Not so today. So would you support the contracting out of the cutting of these raised medians in Upper Bell Chase and other main thoroughfares to make the parish look more like Jefferson Parish medians?
Living south of the wall, I wish my main issue was about beautification. But to answer the question, privatizing can be good, but again, we need to make sure that it's being handled fairly, that the work is actually getting done, that we're not just writing a check to a company that is charging us more than our people could do on their own. So I want to give the jobs to the people in our parish. I want to maintain that. I just think we need to work smarter, and I understand beautification is important, but when you can't even walk outside without have a swarm of mosquitoes around you, that never happened. I've been in my house almost 20 years. For the first time, it's out of control. The ditches aren't cut. The drainage isn't taken care of, and it's everybody's overwhelmed,
Thank you. Ms. Brandon stops immediately when that stop sign is posted. So
Follow the rules. The rules apply
the teacher
to
in
everyone.
is
That's
coming
it.
out. I want to give you kudos for that, a gold star, actually. All right, Mr. Cormier.
Yes, as I stated previously, the goal is to keep money circulating locally. So first, I'd make a distinction between local contractors and out-of-parish or out-of-state contractors. Because again, if you keep the money circulating within the parish, we're going to benefit. But even before that, that preference would be to try to handle that in-house. I think most economic statistics or empirical data prove that if you can do something in-house, most of the time you're going to save money. But on a specific project, say the parish has really lost a lot of its equipment when my father took over. So if there was a specific project where we needed a special piece of equipment, the cost of leasing that equipment would go up. I could see giving that to a local contractor if the cost-benefit analysis would comply. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cormier. Mr. Roussel?
Yes, I appreciate this question because when I was president, they were manicured. They were well kept. Before I left office after Katrina, we had a $700,000 grant that was a highway enhancement fund that we landscaped the highway from the parish line to the air base. And when I left, the new administration came and cut it down. They mowed it down because they did not want to maintain it. It's a matter of setting priorities, and when I'm elected president, it will be a priority.
Thank you. Mr. Lapine?
Thank you, Jeff. I wouldn't be opposed of getting an outside contractor, but right now we have purchased the equipment and we have an agreement with the sheriff's office, and the trustees are cutting the grass, and they're doing a great job, and they're helping us to compete with this overgrown grass. Now, if we had a better management style, a better director, we might be able to combat it a little bit better. In my administration, we will have the best director possible. Thank you.
Okay. All right, we've had some good questions for the whole panel, and now we're going to take a new part of the program. And now we're going to give each candidate the opportunity to ask another candidate a question. That individual will have a minute to answer that question, and then the person asking the question will have 30 seconds to make a rebuttal. And Ms. Brandon, we'll start with you.
Oh, dear. Okay. I'm going to ask Mr. Lapine. Since I've checked back in and becoming an informed citizen, I've been attending council meetings. Recently, at a council meeting, there was some discussion about some problems with civil service. And it was very divisive discussion. And when it came time to the vote, you abstained, if I recall correctly. And I've seen you abstain a few times, and you have a right to do that. But as parish president, how can I be assured that you're going to make those decisions that are going to be unpopular, maybe politically unpopular, to do what's in the best interest of our whole parish?
Thank you, Ms. Brandon. On that particular vote, that was a vote to defund a position that was recommended by our attorney, which I don't think we had the right to defund that position. I wanted some more information. I wasn't yes or no. I wasn't sure. But when the vote came up, it came up hastily and voted. So I abstained because I don't think we had the right to defund that position.
All right, do you have a rebuttal?
No.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cormier?
Question for anyone who's on the council. What will happen at the council meeting on Thursday with the votes on the ordinance regarding the tax?
You want to take that, Mr. Roussel?
Yes, as I said earlier, you know, we are in a situation where we had an opportunity to get rid of that 3 mills on the port tax. They chose not to do that. What they did was they split $1.5 million this year and $1.5 million next year, and they talk about we're going to reduce taxes. All they did was split the bill from this year and next year. So my goal was to be able to take that 3 mills off the bill, and when the school board rolled up 2.5 mills and the council rolled up to 1.5 mil, if they do it tomorrow, then we would have only been a 1 mil increase overall, not counting what the sheriff rolled up. So tomorrow, I don't think that I'll be able to support the tax increase.
Do you have a rebuttal, Mr. Cormier?
No, I was just curious.
All right. Mr. Roussel, your turn. Do you have a question for one of the other candidates?
Not really. I mean, okay, let me ask you this. Earlier we had a discussion about the debt. And many times, I went to the council meeting and asked the council at the time to quit appropriating money out of that $90 million loan that they made. On the Reach B2 project, we spent so much money we couldn't award the project. And I kept going to the mic and asking them, please, quit spending the money, because when you get to the contract, you might not be able to build the project. And they kept saying, oh, we got plenty of money, we got good construction estimates. I said, well, what happens if you have a change order? So why did y'all continue, Mr. Lapine, to spend the money and not be able to build the project?
Well, Mr. Russo, that question was asked many a times, why the information wasn't given to you. I don't know. I was one sitting council member. The administration didn't give you the information. Yes, we did spend some of the money, but it was for projects that were due for the coastal restoration. You had an adversarial relationship with the administration. Again, their duty was to give you the information. I don't know why they didn't.
Do you have a follow-up?
I do. It's not me asking for the information. I'm asking why you voted to spend it all.
Okay. All right. Now, Mr. Levine, you have an opportunity to ask another one of the candidates a question.
We spent it on the projects that were due for the lower end for coastal restoration.
And none of them were built.
Do you have a question, Mr. Levine?
I have a question to Mr. Cormier.
Okay.
July 20th was qualifying day to qualify for president. On July 12th, you switched your party from Democrat to Republican, 8 days before qualifying. Now, you still sit on the Democratic Party Executive Committee as of today. So, Mr. Cormier, are you Republican or Democrat?
Mr. Lapine, if you would know the law, you would know that when I switched parties, I was automatically moved from that committee. Second of all, to answer your question, I'm Catholic, and Hillary's stance on abortion is one that I just can't live with, especially on the partial birth abortion, which is a tremendous travesty in this country and in this nation.
Mr. Lapine, you have 30 seconds to respond.
So I never did get an answer. Okay, thank you.
I gave you the answer.
Thank you,
I
Mr.
said because I do not support partial birth abortions, I cannot support Hillary Rodham Clinton. And I also gave you the answer that had you known the law, when you switch parties, you're automatically removed.
You gave me the answer. Thank you, Mr. Cormier.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Turner?
I don't have a question for them.
No question.
No,
Okay.
sir.
All right. Let's go back to a few more questions, and then we're going to be having some specific questions that were proposed for each one of you that is running. But let's start with this one for all the candidates, and you'll have a minute. And let's start with you, Mr. Cormier. Have you promised jobs and/or parish contracts to any individuals or any businesses as you prepare to possibly take the position of parish president?
No, I have not.
Okay. Mr. Roussel, have you?
No, I have not.
Mr. Lapine?
Absolutely not.
Mr. Turner?
No, sir.
And Ms. Brannon?
No, sir.
Okay. Next question. We'll start with you, Mr. Roussel. Do you support or oppose new taxes, regardless of the source, school board, emergency fire, assessor, etc.? And if you do not, how are you going to take care of the budgetary deficit? And we'll have a minute to use if you'd like.
I think from my comments earlier tonight, you're understanding that I am not a tax guy. I have not proposed or supported the taxes. I told you a little while ago I probably would not vote for the tax tomorrow. And the reason is because we have an opportunity to manage that tax base as far as the millage goes, and we didn't take advantage of it. So the answer is I don't put taxes on anybody without a vote of the people.
Mr. Lapine?
At this moment, Jeff, I cannot support a tax increase. The sheriff's office rolled up their millage, the school board rolled up their millage. We will identify sources of income. We will find money to fix the tax problem. When we get in there and we find out what we actually have. Right now, I can't support the millage. The vote is tomorrow, and I'll be voting no. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Turner?
Will not support a tax increase. We need to make a concerted effort, and we need to be diligent in making sure that we're creating opportunities for our people to generate income, to work, and generate employment, and that's what's going to increase our tax base. Let's give our people jobs. Let's bring businesses in, let's employ them, let's put them to work. That's our tax.
Thank you. Ms. Brannon?
I would absolutely not support a tax increase. What I've done through my campaign, listening and not talking, I met with the engineering department, and I asked just off the cuff, is there any way we can increase revenue in what we're doing right now? And I got the answer, we used to do elevation surveys. We would charge businesses or residents $100, and it would generate about $250,000 a year in revenue. Well, do we have the equipment to do that? Yeah. Do we need more manpower to do that? No. Why aren't we doing it? Outside companies are coming in and doing the elevation surveys and charging $300, $400, $500. And why am I going to go to you for more money until I've looked at our government and our operations and what we're doing to see what we can do to not just cut back, but to increase what we're doing?
Thank you. Mr. Cormier?
Yes, Jeff, the flip-flopping is just a little bit somewhat difficult to comprehend because it was Mr. Lapine who proposed the tax. And so it's, he's going to vote against it, I guess like the lawsuit, But I will do everything possible to avoid raising taxes. As was noted, the school board just raised their taxes because they had a $7 million debt. The sheriff's office raised their taxes because they had a $3 million debt. We have a $211 million debt. So I'd be less than wise to sit around and say never, but I have some ideas to increase the revenues so that we will not have to.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Lapine, we'll start with you on this question. Are you for or against the river diversions being constructed by the CPRA?
Well, the information that I have now, Jeff, I'm against the diversion. I'm against the diversion because it would hurt the fishermen, hurt the oyster industry, and I don't see its proven benefit for the sediment that it says it has. I've sat through most of the meetings, and I've heard the concerns of the oyster fishermen, the shrimpers, and I'm listening to them. I'm not listening to the people in Baton Rouge who say they're going to jam it down our throat. So I'm against it.
Thank you. Mr. Turner?
They were planning a large-scale diversion right next to Ironton and Myrtle Grove, a massive diversion, and that would have really destroyed our area. It's unnecessary. I think we need to sit down with them and reach a reasonable medium, work through the process. But their current plan of just wide-open diversions, no, sir.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Brannon?
It's all about collaboration. Diversions aren't good or bad, right or wrong. In the right places, under the right circumstances, they're amazing. We had the opportunity, all of the candidates were invited to go see a diversion project where in a year, acres of land has been formed. I saw the most beautiful estuary, birds, white pelicans in flocks. What I thought was a flamingo was actually a pink spoonbill crane that was just gorgeous. All on property that's now being established, generated, built by a diversion project. What's the problem is that we have not had true collaboration. We've had people that come in and want to do diversion, and maybe they leave the oyster fishermen out of the discussion. So of course the oyster fishermen are going to say no. But when they're at the table talking together, and I witnessed it, then all of a sudden new ideas come out.
Thank you. Mr. Cormier?
The book Rising Tide is one that I would recommend to every citizen of Plaquemines Parish to read. And in that book, way back when Captain Eads was first doing the opening of the river, they had 3 studies, and all 3 studies concurred that we have to have, the river was never meant to be hemmed in completely. Now, so yes, I do support diversions, but however, if we're going to do diversions, we need to keep a tight control on the quantity And we also need to take the consideration and concern of the oyster fishermen who have investments. So if they're going to do a diversion in a place where oyster fishermen have sunk in capital or invested money, then either we have to minimize the flow or we have to buy them out and compensate them for their investments. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Roussel?
Yes, I am for coastal restoration through dredging number 1. For sustainability, freshwater introduction through controlled structures only. I am against a 250,000 CFS free flow from the river.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Turner, we'll start with you here. Are you in favor of continuing a parish investigation into the legal and unethical business practices of Billy Nungesser?
Yes, I am.
And the alleged profits made during his administration?
Yes, I am. And also, not only into Billy Nungesser, but also the dealings where he shifted monies and revenues that were designated for areas that were devastated and shifted into areas that weren't devastated. Classic example, you got a huge, beautiful pavilion here in Belchase, outstanding. I wish we had them, but I want you to know that it was off the backs of the Diamond, the people in Diamond. Diamond Community Center. Before Katrina, we had a community center. Part of the deal was in a legacy program that we would get a huge pavilion. One night at the council meeting, no, just before the council meeting, President of United Way called me, quote, he said, "Oh, hell, Councilman, go with the pavilion and I'll close it in. You'd have a closed building," right? At the council meeting, I said, the only reason I'm approving this is because of that man right there. We got nothing. It got shifted to another area. Our tennis court, they moved the money from the tennis court to Beerus and then moved it to the animal shelter in Belchase. Discovered at a council meeting, had them take it down. What took place was criminal. He should be in jail, as Donald Trump would say.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Ms. Brannon?
Yeah, there are no angels in our political history, that's for sure. But we're in crisis. As parish president, I won't cover anything up. I'm going to be looking and digging, and everything that I find is going to be available to the public because that's the law. As I find things, certainly I'll turn it over to the Attorney General, the Metropolitan Crime Commission, Lee Zurich, whoever. I don't have time to go looking for evidence. That's not my forte. I'm good at connecting dots. I'm good at creative thinking. I'm good at bringing people together. I'm not going to spend another dime of our parish money on attorneys. We could support a small country on what we spend on attorneys. It's got to stop. Yes, if there's wrongdoing, bring in the FBI and open up the books.
Thank you. Mr. Cormier?
This is one area, Jeff, where my legal knowledge will benefit the parish and it will save us some money because I will apply my legal analysis to what's going on. I have not been privy to the executive sessions, but I will get myself up to date and I'll do the cost-benefit analysis. Naturally, if we can recoup monies that are rightly due to the people in the parish, we'll pursue it. If it's small monies and we're going to wind up spending more on legal fees than on what we recoup, then the cost-benefit analysis won't work. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Roussel?
Yeah, I think this issue is worthy of a few minutes, not just one or two. Because what's happened is that over the last year, an investigation has taken place. Those files have been compiled, and they have been delivered to the federal government, to the FBI, to the Attorney General, to the Crime Commission, and to the Ethics Board. So those issues are already completed as far as the criminal aspects go. Now, we have been involved in meetings in executive session, which is supposed to be a privileged conversation between an attorney and a client. And when we go into executive session, before we get out to the table, someone has called somebody and explained exactly what went in on the strategy of these issues. This is a gross violation of their ethics of office to walk out of an executive session and divulge to the potential target what we are doing. It's terrible and it's happening today, so I will continue to see any wrongdoing brought to justice, however it may be.
Thank you. Mr. Lapine?
Thank you, Mr. Brandon, for saying what you did, because, again, I don't want to spend another dime on this frivolous litigation. Now, if Billy Nunguess has done something wrong, hand over the information to the Attorney General, the FBI, whoever you want to hand it over to. But stop the pending litigation against our parish employees, past or present. This is criminal. These guys, stop making bad decisions against good people. And that's what I stand for. I'm not worried about Billy Nunguess. You go after Billy Nunguess, go after Billy Nunguess. But do not sue the good people of Plaquemines Parish. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Levine. All right, we have some questions tailored for each one of the candidates, and many were submitted, and this is a sample of one that was submitted for each one of the candidates. So, Ms. Brandon, we'll start with you. This is just for you. You served on the school board for 16 years and ran again unsuccessfully in 2010. Other than having served on the Plaquemines Parish School Board, what do you think makes you qualified to oversee an administration of hundreds of employees and multi-million-dollar budgets?
Because I'm smart, and I'm honest, and I'm tenacious. And whatever I do, I do it to the nth degree. Whatever I'm interested in, I want to know everything there is to know about it. I've had my own business. The school board seems like small potatoes, but it is a microcosm of exactly what's happening here. Just like we look at our parish government, and it's a microcosm of Trump and Hillary, right? We can't change that, but we can change right here. Plaquemines is good at cleaning up our own mess. We're good at taking care of ourselves. We have good people, smart people, we know what to do. I'm going to make us follow the rules. It's real simple. It's not rocket science.
Thank you. Ms. Cormier, you'll have a minute for this. Other than citing your father's experience as parish president, you have no executive level experience other than management level experience. So what makes you think that you are qualified to serve as president of a massive multi-million-dollar budget in Plaquemines Parish?
Well, one, as you noted, I have managerial experience. And two, as Plaquemines Parish Council Attorney, I learned the charter inside and out, just about. I don't have it memorized, but I know how to operate within it. The work I did in Washington, D.C. at a banking institute as a research fellow really opened up my mind to a lot of the global financial issues that we're dealing with. For example, another thing that I'm going to do when negotiating issues is I'm going to raise the fact that we are heavily dependent upon oil and gas. Now, you look at other commodities in this nation, corn, wheat, and others, and the federal government sets a price range for those commodities. Why is it that, and they do that so that the budget, so that people, the governments in the Midwest and the Northeast can manage their budgets properly, because that way, if you don't know what the price is going to be of your commodity that you produce, you can't budget properly. Why is it that we don't have a price range for oil?
Thank you, sir. Mr. Roussel, you were parish president prior to Hurricane Katrina. Can you honestly say that the southern end of the parish got their fair share when funding came in to help those devastated areas by the storm?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, because when the funding came in, I was out of office. What happened was, I was in office for the year after Hurricane Katrina, and I got to pump the water out, clean up the debris, take the houses off the levees and out of the canals, move the boats out of the yards. I got to clean up. When the FEMA money started flowing, that $400 million that I mentioned to you earlier, because we didn't make priorities and fix our water plant, I wasn't here to spend it.
Thank you. Mr. Levine, can you please explain your flip-flopping on your vote for the coastal oil and gas lawsuits? As a former audit chairman, how can you explain never auditing the Nungesser administration, which caused a multi-million-dollar deficit?
The lawsuit of the oil and gas, as I stated, Jeff, I voted the first time when my constituents from the low end came down and said they needed my support. They wanted to bring this, the permit violations that the oil companies have caused out in the coast. So when I stood there, I said, I stand with you guys. When I moved forward 2014, some of the lower end representatives came to me and said, would you speak to some of my constituents, excuse me. And I said, sure. And I sat down with a bunch of them. I talked to them. I got to know them. I got to know their lifestyle. So as a public servant, I think that's my job to say, guys, I stand by you. I'm listening to you. So the next vote, I voted to dismiss the lawsuit. At least I was there to vote on the lawsuit. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Turner, you've said that hiring outsiders has gone on for too long. The question is to you, would you hire a local person for a position that isn't qualified over a person that is qualified, regardless of where that person came from?
No, sir. They have to be qualified. But I believe we have qualified people. To assume for too long, so many have assumed that we're incapable, that we're not qualified. Well, we're going to change that image. I mean, think about it. They're constantly telling us that we're not smart enough. They're constantly telling us that our kids aren't good enough, that we're not good enough. And so we're definitely going to hire qualified people. But sometimes the insinuation is that because of where we are, because we're on the tip, we're at the bottom and we don't matter and we don't have what it takes to make it. Listen, we have geniuses here. We went out on a tour of the coast with Ryan Lambert. We have people who have invested here. Listen, there isn't anything that we can't do with what we have right here. We just have to make it happen, and I promise you we will. For too long, outsiders have been occupying seats that locals have been sitting in. That will change.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. This will be a question for all the candidates, and we'll start with you, Ms. Brannon. How will you, if elected as parish president, change the dynamic from dealing with hurricanes and abnormal weather events in a reactive way into a proactive approach?
First thing we have to do is have money to be able to do something. I shudder to think what would happen if a hurricane were to hit today. To make it through this hurricane season, we just have to cross our fingers and toes and pray. But absolutely, we need to have a plan. It's disheartening to hear, as someone that lives on the south side of the wall, that you've got to be out by this time because the wall's going to close. It feels, talk about disenfranchising. Those of us on the south end of the parish know that. We need to, it's about communication. It's communication and collaboration. That's the only way. I don't have all the answers, but I'm going to surround myself with the people that do. And I'm not just going to listen to what they say, I'm going to think about it. And I'm going to gather more information when I need to. Because maybe the right answer hasn't even been thought of yet, because we haven't had the right people in the room together.
Thank you. Mr. Cormier?
Yes, the first thing we need to do for emergencies to be prepared is collaborate with federal and state agencies. We need to, for example, have our pre-bid contracts in place and have everything ready to be prepared if a storm hits. The second thing is the more difficult thing, and that's we used to have an emergency fund, and unfortunately that's been just about depleted. So we need to take the steps necessary to pay down some of the debt. And then once we pay down some of that debt so we're not getting eaten alive by the interest, then start refunding a fund, a special account for emergencies for a rainy day.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Roussel?
Yes. I've done this. I was here for Katrina, I was here for Rita. And I had the experience as to what to do. And I'll give you a little example. You know, everyone has a hurricane plan. Those plans have been around for years. The key is that you have to be able to implement the plan, and any good plan will have deviations. For instance, when we evacuated the southern end of the parish and the East Bank, we used all of our available resources and we brought them and marshaled them at the Bell Chase Auditorium. But when we ran out of drivers to move people to Safeway, I got on a bus and picked the person on the bus who had the most family members and a driver's license and gave them the key and a PIN number for fuel and got them out of the parish. Now, that wasn't in a plan. That's something that you have to implement on the fly and be able to do when it comes to leadership. I'm telling you tonight that I have the experience and the leadership to do this job. I don't need this job but it's got to be done. I don't need this, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roussel. Mr. Lapine?
Thank you, Ms. Correa. We will be prepared. We will plan. We will have an implemented plan with the Sheriff's Office, our Director of Homeland Security. Again, we may have to deviate from the plan, but we will have a plan in place. Most of all, we will protect the lower end. And if I hope never happens and a hurricane hits, we will get our lower end back in their homes, back to work as fast as we can, because that was part of the problem last time. We want to make sure that we will be able to help those people in the low end. But we will have a plan in place. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. Mr. Turner?
I'm wondering if we will have a plan in place for those who are serving now. Do we have a plan in place? Now, really, the state has a plan, the parish has a plan, just as Mr. Roussel has stated. There is a plan in place, and I believe it's a good plan. But there's a level of detail to that plan that the local government has to work out, and there are still things that we can do. You know, every year when hurricane season, we should automatically be closing the culverts. Parish workers can do that. But instead, what we do in the Magnolia area, right? It's not protecting anybody, but it allows the water to come in and ends up flooding West Point Lahash. I mean, that's basic maintenance stuff that we can do in advance, but it takes studying the plan, reviewing our vulnerabilities, and it's not like we haven't had flooding in our area and we don't know where these vulnerabilities are. We just have to invest the time and work it. And so we put our people to work early, identify where the gaps are. We need to work the plan. And if there are any gaps, anything lacking, that's where we go to the state and we reach an agreement as to how we're going to solve our problem. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This is a two-part question, but we want to keep the answers to a minute. And we'll start with you, Mr. Cormier. Would you support the inclusion of a referendum option in the parish charter? And would you also support making the recall of a parish president easier? Right now, Louisiana has one of the highest standards to recall an elected official. You need 1/3 of the registered voters in a parish or in a city to sign a recall petition. And this is in light of the recent scandal involving the Jefferson Parish president.
That's an interesting question. It's two-pronged, and let me tell you why. First, we are pre-1974 home rule charter. So the state, if we weren't that, then I think the state would have to make that decision in Title 33 of our laws. However, I do think we could do that legally because we're a pre-74 Constitution, and that wouldn't be a question of police powers. I would not be opposed to it.
And that is changing the recall provisions? Or
allowing for it, correct.
Okay, all right. What about including a referendum option in the parish charter?
I think it would be legal, and if the people would want it, fine with me.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Roussel?
Yes, as Mr. Cormier stated, the state law would have to be changed, and we could support that without any reservations.
Okay, so you support both the referendum and changing the recall provision?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Lapine?
Yes, Jeff, I would support both.
Thank you. Mr. Turner?
The parish talks about what it takes to do a recall, and I'm not sure if I would change it. I'm not sure if the standard is too high. Let me give an example. A recall was done on Billy Nungesser. We didn't get the numbers, right? And so the question is there enough interest on the part of the registered voters to do it? Sometimes you might have a handful of people with legitimate issue and sound information, but we're a democracy and we're a body. The question is the number adequate? And right now I think it's adequate, but I would be willing to consider it further.
Thank you. And Ms. Brannon?
I would support both, absolutely. Our leaders have got to start behaving like leaders on a state, federal, and local level. And when people behave badly, there should be consequences. And, you know, in cases where the person admits the guilt, then they should leave. And we should, if they don't, we should be able to enforce it. Now, if the charges are pending, people are innocent and still until proven guilty. So we can't just railroad people out. Here again, that's where it goes back to that trust, that collaboration. We've got to just build that communication and honesty in government, and then I don't think we're going to have a problem.
Okay, thank you. And this is our final question, and this, again, was a lot of the questions dealt with this issue, so I wanted to address this, and we'll start with you, Mr. Roussel. In light of the parish's financial situation, how do you plan to move the parish forward and especially promote growth in the lower region and the East Bank region of the parish?
Well, first of all, we have to be able to balance our budget. We have to be able to provide basic services, sewer, water, drainage, levee protection. Before we do any movement forward, we've got to catch up. We are in a serious crisis situation. Now, I could come up here and tell you that we're going to have all these wonderful things and we're going to move all kinds of people and jobs in. The only thing that we have going for us right now is the river. The Mississippi River is our golden nugget that we have to mine. If you look at the project that we have right now with the VGLNG on the port property, if we can get that successfully permitted and on the property, that will allow us to put, as I said earlier in this program, $1 billion to $2 billion on our tax rolls. And if we can increase our tax rolls and our tax income, then we can provide better services. And until we can provide better services, it's hard to welcome somebody when you come through the tunnel when it looks like it does. What businesses want to come here if you don't make priorities on at least an appearance that we know what we're doing?
Thank you. Mr. Lapine?
Yes, Jeff, and he's correct on that assertion. We need to look to that river. The river is our answer to some of our problems, southern and on the East Bank. If we could develop our port on both sides of the river and develop something for the East Bank and the West Bank, bring jobs to the East Bank, bring jobs to the lower end. Yes, we have to look forward to that. We have to move to that. And that's our mainstream, the port. The port will bring economic development. It's an engine that is incredible. And we will bring billions of dollars and put it on the tax roll. And that's how we look toward making the lower end and the East Bank work. Now, if we make the budget work, anyone who tells you it's a quick fix is not a quick fix. Right now we're going to limp along. But if we can get some of these projects done fast and expeditiously, we can move and we can make this parish work. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Levine. Mr. Turner?
We need to pursue a port on the East Bank. The port studies showed that was the number one site, number one place to have a port. It was the East Bank, not next to Nungesser's property, right? That wasn't even number 2. But that's where we bought land. So we need to make a concerted effort to do the right thing and not take care of people. The port study showed the number one site was on the East Bank. We need to continue to pursue that. Also, we need to make sure that we're taking care of the employees, because as you increase morale, then you increase proficiencies. We also need to have a master plan as to which areas we need to commercialize. I know there are areas in Port Sulphur and all along the southern end that the property needs to become commercial along Highway 23 to attract businesses. And so if it's commercial, then the businesses, at least they know there's a spot for them. I believe there are a lot that we can do for the southern end and East Bank to generate revenues. It's a matter of the will, not so much a matter of ability. It's a matter of will. I have the will to get it done.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Ms. Brannon?
I think we're not capitalizing on our tourism. We are a parish that's rich in resources and rich in history. Iberville and Bienville came up that river. You know, I went for the first time on a boat ride to Fort St. Philip. I'm 59 years old. I've lived in this parish my whole life. Shame on me that was my first boat trip to Fort St. Philip. We need to be tourists in our own parish. We need to embrace our parish. And like I keep saying, we've got to make it easy to do business with us. I spent a lunchtime down in Buras the other day and just sat in one of the little sandwich shops, had my lunch, opened my computers, and listened. And as probably 16 people came through for lunch, none of them were parish residents. They were all hired from outside of the parish and were driving all the way down to Buras to go to work. I asked, it happened that the CEO of that company happened to be having lunch. I said, are we easy to do business with? And he said, no. It took me 3 months, it took me 3 months to get a work trailer on property I own.
Thank you. Mr. Cormier.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. As I stated earlier, in the short-term hub zone, that is going to help greatly because, according to my calculations, South Plaquemines, Coastal Plaquemines, and the East Bank qualify. And if we get them certified, that will attract some business investment. Long-term, as is obvious, it's clear, the river, billions of dollars pass on that river. We need to take advantage of those business opportunities. We have approximately the first 100 miles of the Mississippi River. Now, it's key, and as a businessman, a serious businessman, we need to look at return on investment. And that's where I agree with Mr. Turner that, the West Bank property can be a good long-term investment. But in the short term, until the Peters Road Bridge gets built and the rail gets situated, then it's not going to be a short-term producer of revenue unless we get a lease signed and they start paying someone who doesn't need the rail. But for a big operation, they generally require a rail. And so that's why I break it up. And another great point was ecotourism. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Cormier. And now, before we go to our closing statements, the question that is on everyone's mind, and we'll start with you, Mr. Lapine, is it Trump or Clinton?
I'm a Republican, Donald Trump.
Mr. Turner?
Burgard Turner, parish president.
I guess he's voting for himself. You can't vote for yourself for both positions, Mr. Turner. Ms. Brannon?
I can't vote for anyone that disrespects women the way that Mr. Trump does. I'm casting my vote for Hillary.
Mr. Cormier?
I already answered the question when I told Mr. Lapine I can't support Hillary.
So does that mean you're voting for Trump? Okay. And finally, Mr. Roussel.
I'm not either party. I'm an independent. I left both parties because of the bickering and what went on, and I'm not going to vote for anybody.
All right. Now let's go to our final segment of the program, our closing statements. We're going to go in exact reverse order, so we'll start with you, Ms. Brennan.
Seems like we're always starting with me. That's okay.
2 minutes?
Our parish charter identifies the position of president of Plaquemines Parish as the chief executive officer. So you, the people, right now are interviewing the applicants for CEO of this multi-million-dollar business. We have people here that have had the opportunity to show you what they could do and to change things. I don't see it. How did we get here? If you're going to change things, what are you waiting for? What are you going to do differently as parish president? What I'm going to do, I can't fix everything in 2 years, but in those 2 years, I will work very hard to make sure that we are cleaning it up, and we're going to go from the most corrupt parish in the state to setting the bar for what good government should be. We did it with our school system. We were at the bottom, and when I got off the school board, we were the flagship. We were absolutely at the top of the state. That's what we're going to do with government under my administration. I wouldn't be surprised if I'm not reelected in 2 years because I'm going to make decisions that are going to be unpopular. It might not be what everybody wants to hear, but right now we have a patient that's very sick. I don't think our patient is terminally ill, but it's very sick. And you know that when we have a friend, a loved one, or a pet that's sick and needs to be tended to, if there's a surgery or something that needs to happen, it gets ugly, it gets painful, and then the healing can begin. This is what we need to do. We're going to have to roll up our sleeves and do the hard work and recreate who we are and how we govern, so that we truly are a government of the people, by the people, and for the people.
Thank you, Ms. Brandon. All right, next up, Mr. Lapine, you have 2 minutes. Mr. Lapine?
I'm sorry.
You have 2
I
minutes.
was writing, okay. First of all, Jeff, thank you tonight. Thank you, Patty, for having us. Most of all, I want to thank these 4 candidates right here. Guys, you don't know how hard it is to run a parish-wide campaign. Of course, they said I can never do it because I ran twice unopposed. So I've been out there every day, knocking on doors, talking to people. And the main point is, why do you want the job? Why do you want the job? We don't have any money. We're not going anywhere. Why do you want the job? I want the job because I want to be a leader. I told you tonight I was a leader. I've been elected twice as council chairman. So that shows you guys that I can lead. My job as a parish president will make the 3 best directors that this parish has ever seen. Those 3 directors will run the day-to-day operations of this parish. My job will be to go out and sell this parish, sell the citrus industry, sell the fishing industry, sell the shrimping industry. We need to move Plaquemines forward. And if we don't, we're going to be dead in the water. Ladies and gentlemen, I told you tonight, I own my own business. I own my own shop. I have a clientele of 31 years. I don't need the job, but I want the job. I want the job because I want to be your leader. So vote for number 78, Kirk Lapine. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lapine. Mr. Roussel, you're next.
Yes, thank you. I first want to thank all of you for coming out tonight and those at home that are taking the time out to watch this debate. This is an important election. It is important that you know the candidates and the issues. I also want to thank the moderator, Jeff Carrere, and our Patty, wherever she may, Patty, thank you very much for putting this on. As I mentioned to you earlier, it's an opportunity for people to see and hear what we've got. You've heard the issues tonight and the candidates' qualifications. Meeting our future needs with reduced revenues will be a challenge, as you've heard throughout the theme of this debate. Improving the dated infrastructure like the water plant that we have no money for, that we're buying Jefferson Parish water. Expanding economic development and creating jobs will require experienced leadership. I know because I've done it. I've worked with the state and federal officials, I've balanced budgets, and I've made tough decisions. And I'm proud of my record and the trust that you have placed in me when you elected me to the council, the legislature, and as your parish president. I also appreciate the fact that I could not have done it alone. All of my accomplishments are shared with many dedicated parish employees and elected officials that I worked with every day to make Plaquemines better. The future of our parish means a lot to me. I want to leave a better place for our children and grandchildren to enjoy. This is not a job I need, but this is a job that needs to be done. When I look at my daughters sitting in the back and my granddaughters at home, I know we must make decisions that ensure our future. This is what motivates me, and that's why I'm humbly asking for your support and vote.
Thank you, Mr. Roussel. Mr. Turner, you're next.
Holy Spirit, move on the hearts and minds of the voters and give me favor. When your family members ask you, which candidate will really protect us, tell them it's Turner, number 80. When parish employees ask you, which candidate will really protect our jobs, tell them it's Turner, number 80. When your friends ask you, which candidate will really fight for us, tell them it's Turner, number 80. When coworkers ask you, which candidate will make government work for us, tell them it's Turner, number 80. When your friends ask, which candidate can we really trust, tell them it's Turner, number 80. And when anyone asks you, which candidate is really the right candidate for us at this time, tell them it's Turner, number 80. And finally, after you've heard all of the noise and all of the speeches, and you close your eyes and you ask the Lord, which candidate did you really prepare for such a time as this? And these are difficult times. I believe that the Lord will impress you that it's Turner, number 80. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. And finally, Mr. Cormier.
Yes, thank you, Jeff, for moderating. Thank you, Patty, for putting this on. And thank all of you for showing up tonight, for taking your civic responsibilities and duties seriously. That's part of the problem with our nation. I don't think we have enough people participating and paying attention. Attorneys are the butt of many jokes, used car salesmen and everything else. But in times, desperate times, they're needed. My legal knowledge, my experience as a parish council attorney, will enable me to represent this parish at every level, at the federal level in Washington, D.C., at the state level in Baton Rouge, and locally. And I'll be willing to work with the council. The debt crisis, as I said, is one of the biggest issues, $211 million. In January of 2014, you can quote me on that. I think my father paid that debt down to $187 million. Don't quote me on that one because I don't have the paperwork on it. And I'm going to continue to try to pay that down with working with the council. I think the biggest reason why I'm running is because I think my father would want me to run and finish up his term, his last 2 years. Thank you for your consideration and your support. Thank you.
I'd like to let our viewers know that the PP debates can be viewed from the website. And of course, debates will also air 3 times on the New View Cable Station 15. I want to take this opportunity to thank Patty McCarty for putting this on. Can you all help me give her a great round of applause? We also want to thank our sponsor, Mississippi River Bank. Please help me thank them as well for what they've done. Our timekeeper, Scott Morse, thank you. I want to thank all of those in attendance, and most of all, please help me thank our candidates for Plaquemines Parish President. I'm Jeff Cruier. Hope you've enjoyed tonight's presentation, and don't forget to go out and vote. Thank you all.
Benny, good job. Thank you.